thought that was a stack of tires at first.
Oh gosh, that would take some
I was like,
pull
wow.
these in here.
That was a lot of work.
You're going?
Okay, good morning, calling to the Board of Selectmen meeting on Wednesday, February 5th to order at 8:01, and can everybody please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. I need an approval of the agenda, but before I do, I'd like to make a couple of changes. We have some guests with us this morning, and I don't wanna tie them up longer than necessary. So if we could move the townwide pavement condition assessment presentation by Beta up, and then followed by the Mutis Firehouse Renovation Committee up, right after the approval of the agenda, that would be great. Who goes first? Oh, I'm sorry, Firehouse goes first. There you go. So I'm asking to move A and B under number 5, I'm sorry, A and B under number 7, up under our approval of the amended.
Under 5,
Is under 5.
firehouse and pavement.
What I said the first time.
So moved. It's early.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Alright. Next up, we have the Mutis Firehouse Committee project update, the request for funding. Greg.
Good morning, thank you for the time. I brought my as my backup here this morning. So the Firehouse Committee's been going now a little over a year, quite honestly, or close to it. The committee was initially started as a renovation, and that was the initial thought process going in. Since that happened, we've had 3 different engineers out there, between 2 the town hired, 1 that we hired as part of the project that came in under Silver Petroselli. Every one of them has come to the conclusion that you do not want to rebuild this and renovate it. It's not safe. We can only renovate it back to the 1980s codes, which at best will get us, a poor wind load, a poor snow load. It's just not for a public safety building. If this was a storage building sitting on public works property that you were gonna store stuff in, it would be one thing. But to put millions and millions of dollars worth of fire trucks into, it does not make sense to create a building that's unsafe and not gonna stand up to the weather that we see happening and the increasing unpredictable weather that we see happening. We already, back several years ago, we were shoveling snow, not that we weren't other buildings, but this thing was sagging, we were worried about it. During windstorms and hurricanes, we're evacuating the fire department out today and moving trucks out because we know the building is not structurally safe if we have a major wind event and a major storm come through. So with all of that, the committee kind of switched gears, and we've now turned it to look towards a rebuild, right, a new building project. So as part of that, when we initially came to the Board of Selectmen for funding, we came as a renovation project. And as Eric, right, as you're doing construction plans and process, it's very different in your pricing structure with your architect if you're doing a renovation versus a complete new build. So we originally had a budget of around $122,000 to kind of do that renovation design rework. That is not gonna, get us to where we need to get to. So as part of it, last week, they came in and presented the revised project cost for us for the architect to get us. So you have in your packet, you have 2 things. One is the actual public informational hearing that we did. These are all the slides from that. So it gives you a lot of background just to the project itself. I'm not gonna go through it in total, but it gives you pictures of the condition of some of the building areas. It will show you the current plan design of the building, the layout of the building, and the requested square footage. I will say, this, when we first started kind of going from a renovation to a remodel, I talked about this at the public hearing, this was starting out at a building that was much larger than what we're asking for today, right? And credit to the fire department for coming back when we threw the numbers at them and showed them what this was gonna cost to build. You know, they went through and said, hey, these are things we would like, but we understand that this is not a realistic number and we need to start to scale things down. We've also created a space that would be available to the public within here, right? So it's a training room for the fire department at nights and weekends when they need it, but it also has a space that can be secured off for the public to use as a meeting room or a training room for other events. So we've tried to make the building usable, you know, as truly as a public building and a building the town will be proud of long term. In our first phase of schematic design is, you know, what's created all these renderings and stuff for us. So you know, we started out initially, this was about a 17,000 square foot building that they were asking for. And right now we're down under, or right around 14,000 with all the circulation spaces and everything. So we did bring it down pretty significantly in the size in reducing it. Any questions so far on, go ahead.
Same location?
Same location, so thank you, I was gonna go there. So as part of the public hearing, there were some asks to look at other properties across the street and down the street. So we worked with Jimmy Ventris to look at those properties. One of them was a no-go, just based on the landscaping and how the property laid out wasn't gonna work at all. The second one we looked at up towards Hilltop, the layout of the building, we worked with Silver Petrocelli, the layout just doesn't work, right? It creates an unsafe environment into a parking lot to exit and enter, it created a weird travel path. So it just was not a good layout on either one of those pieces of property. So
Was Harris ever considered?
up on Mount Parnassus, we did not consider the Harris property, so and part of that was based on the Moodus Firehouse sits, it may not be central to town, but it is central to our population. Right, this side of town has way more population, and maybe a lot bigger on the other side, but our population is not central out there. So you know, we do forget about, we have the Lake Hayward Firehouse, right? That you know, over time it's changed what apparatus is in there, but you know, as part of the new ISO standard, there will be water, a tanker in there, or an engine with water on it. So right, so we have response capability out there. We also have a much greater mutual aid partnership around out there. Right, Salem and Colchester can be to that end of town as quickly as we can. Versus here, East Hampton or Colchester coming into the Moodus section is way longer time-wise. So we talked about the Harris property, don't get me wrong, but the ask, and as we looked at kind of the call volumes and the just you know, the responses of where the calls were, they're in Moodus. And they're this side of town, so we stayed with it. We also looked at Heritage Park as trying to put it in the middle, and the architects actually came back with a quick design. You know, Silver Petrocelli put together a quick design, and when you look to try and fit it in there, it actually becomes an unsafe environment if you're trying to keep the park active. There's just
The road
and
to get out,
yeah.
not good.
You'd have to do work not only on Great Hillwood, but you'd also have to do DOT work out onto 149, cause that angle is just awful. So so we agreed as a committee, after looking at all those options, to stick with the property where it is. The other thing about sticking where the property is today, there is an existing well we're hoping to be able to use. Even the septic we're hoping, you know, to look at and be able to use potentially, depending on how it tests out and stuff. So there are benefits. The utilities are all in already, even though they'll have to be relocated a little bit, but it's there. You're not paying somebody to, you know, Eversource to come in and provide those. So there is also a little bit of a cost savings on some of that for using the existing property.
Quick question, how big is the current?
So it's about 7,000 square feet, if you look at, yeah. There is a slide in here, page. So it's kind of like a Excel
there it is.
chart, yeah, that lists out current versus net current versus net proposed, so if you go to
Some of
the,
these things are also OSHA,
yeah, that's a,
things that are coming through that they're gonna need, that unfortunately we're mandated to do.
like if you, I don't know if you've been in the company 2 firehouse, Tanya, but right, I mean, coats are hanging in the bays where the trucks start up and the washing machine is out there. Those are all things that are not OSHA approved anymore. You can't have that kind of stuff happening, even though we have exhaust systems in there. There's requirements now for guys to have 2 sets of gear based on OSHA for cleaning and storage. You can't put it in your car, you can't take it home, right? So the need for storage is becoming way more than it ever was in there. And all the offices are upstairs on the mezzanine right now. They're built out of, Don and I can tell you, cause my emergency management office up there and his fire marshal was up, the office was up there for a long time. I mean, the heat is, there's no heat up there. In the summer, you're using a portable air conditioner out in the hallway to try and cool 5 offices because there's no ventilation. It's just an awful setup, right, for anybody to try and work up there. Other questions?
Not yet.
So with that said, there are 3, so the goal of this project, or the goal of the committee right now is twofold. One, keep the project going, but really to get this building to where it's construction ready, right? And we have plans for it to be construction ready, because what that does is, for most of our grants, it makes us grant eligible. You know, in order to get a grant, they wanna see pretty near construction ready documents as you're applying for the grant. So in order to get there, there are several phases that we have to do. And on this 2-page document that you guys have from Silver Petroselli, we've completed the schematic design phase out of the money that we've gotten, and that's where we are today. You know, to date, we've spent somewhere around $60,000, just a little bit under that we've paid out so far, but we have a couple bills coming, so it'll be somewhere around $60,000 out of that 122. The town right now is in the process, Don, right, we're doing site survey that we're gonna have to pay for out of the remaining money here. We also know we need to do some environmental work that we're trying to pre-test on the site to make sure that we identify any issues on the site before we start doing construction or demolition. So that will end up, you know, we're working through that now. That will have to come out of the remaining, you know, $50,000 or so on the project as we start to move into the next phases. So we go now from schematic design to design development, and ultimately that is, you know, we start to work with the committee works with the fire department, works with Silver Petroselli, and we get plans that are about 50% of construction documents in this design development phase. It gets us close to grant ready, but probably not 100% there. That phase will take us about 3 months to get through. You know, if we start it mid to late February, if we can get a money approved through you know, you folks and then the Board of Finance to move this forward, it gets us out probably till the end of May, beginning of June for getting through the design development. There's also a land use process that we'll need to go through as part of this design development, which usually takes, you know, 30 to 60 days to get through. So that is the next phase that we'll enter into. That phase is about $224,000 to complete, to get us to this, you know, 50% design documents, have land use approval of the property, etc. From there, it's about a 2-month process to take those 50% documents and make them construction ready documents to be able to go out to bid with those documents. So that would take us a couple months, put us out, you know, probably in August, September. With the summer, nothing, we love to say it would go 2 months straight, but we all know with summertime, nothing ever happens that way. So, you know, you're probably realistically looking at, you know, end of August, September for that stuff to be done. And then we would be ready to go out to bid with the project. One of the benefits of going out to bid is as we're bonding, we have true numbers. We know what the project will cost us to bond here. We are very comfortable based on current projects that are happening across the state, with Silver Petrocelli, projects that I'm doing in New Haven today. I'm very comfortable with the number that we're putting on the table. I don't think, there's any issue with this. We're looking, it comes out to be about, for the construction, about $758 a square foot for construction. It's a good number, on average. It is actually matching up to almost identical to a number that Silver Petrocelli is paying out right now. They just finished a bid, was it Canton, Don? Bristol, is it one of them? So on a firehouse that they just bid, so it all is kind of matching up there. So that phase, part of, phase two, the construction documents getting there is another $164,000. Then Silver Petrocelli would assist us through the bid process. And so to get all of their, that's another $170,000 to get us to that point where we're ready to go out to bid, we're ready to do apply for grants with the documents. And then the last 200,000 or 194,000 is really the construction administration. So this is Silver Petrocelli helping us manage the project, sign off on the project, all the documents with the towns, keeping all the contractors' submittals that come in on all the materials to be used, their administration of that as we go along. So this is it's about a 6.5% fee on the project, the construction cost of the project. There are other costs, right? When you build a building, we have owner's costs that add on top of the construction cost to get us to this 14 million, and there is a breakout in here of how we get to that number ultimately, but.
CMs, you gonna hire them?
So, right now, we don't have, if you look at the costing we've done, we don't have a CM number in there. We are carrying, so in that number, it's about an $11 million number for construction. We are carrying some costs in there for a general contractor to help. Now, in today's world, the CM costs have come down where they used to be 5%, so, they're down to 2.5% because the CMs are looking for work on a project like this, so.
Construction manager,
Yeah, sorry, construction manager.
figured it out.
We may, it may be a balance or very close to it, the numbers that we have in the project already in that 11 million, for construction we're carrying. Also in that 11 million we have an escalation built in there to cover, the, year and a half it'll take to start to build this project out and get it going. So credit to Silver Petrocelli, who we have a long-term relationship with on the town. They know the town, they know us. Their fees came in under what we were thinking and what we have in the original slide deck. Based on knowing us, the amount of, and I said this at the Board of Fire Commissioners last night in my conversations with David, they were able to reduce those fees down from, their initial was about 7% down to 6.5%. It may not seem like a lot, but it is, it's helpful on the overall project. But a lot of that was credit to the fire guys who really worked with Silver Petrocelli in that schematic design phase and nailed down a plan. Their concern as Silver Petrocelli always is, well, the plan's gonna change, we have to go back and do rework, and we're not to that point right now, right? We're locked into a plan, everybody's in agreement, so Silver Petrocelli is happy in that phase. We did ask them, and we've built into this process 2 value engineering sessions, right? So one at the end of DD, as we get an estimate that comes in, if we, something's way out of whack, we have the ability to start to look in how we can value engineer the cost down a little bit. And then also at the end of the construction documents, right, in that phase, where can we value engineer out if we get another estimate and it's high? Or the bid process, comes back and it's high, so the bidding phase, so. Think we're in a good place, honestly, to move this forward.
we looking for funding for this fiscal?
So, yes, so the ask would be,
Not, I mean, for total project.
no, well, this is where we can talk, not, right, we need $223,000 at a minimum to start to get into the next phase. So that does kinda hand tie us a little bit, cause I think we'll be done before the end of the fiscal year. If this takes us 3 months to get through this, we're actually done with the design phase probably at the end of May, which leaves us June where we're kinda hand tied with no money. But with that said, if it's $223,000 we can come up with to keep this project moving forward until next fiscal year, that's what we take, right? And we'll continue to move, and if we know, the one thing I will say, and I think I can speak fairly confident with Silver Petroselli, if we know the funding is approved in the budget, they're gonna continue to work, right? We wouldn't get bills coming in for phase 2 for the construction document stuff in any kind of a, a pencil rack. We wouldn't start to see, or a progress payment, we wouldn't start to see that until July anyway on the project, so.
So you're gonna put in next year's budget, the balance of the design work is a capital item plus the estimated construction costs.
So that's what I'm at, like, when we talk about the total 588, right? That's one, and then the 14 million
It's
is
actually,
another one, cause then we have to go through it,
Yeah.
as far as timing goes,
Yeah.
referendum.
it's actually 13.5, or right, cause this 5.8 is in that number. So it's,
In other words, are we, this board, worried about the 14 million or the 588?
588. That's what we're asking, right? We can't get to that $14 million number confident, shouldn't say that. We're confident in the $14 million number based on estimates and what's going on, right? We can't get to the point that we're grant ready and able to go apply for grants and get bonding and all of that kind of stuff until we go through this 588 over the course of the next 6 months or 8 months.
But you have to put it out there as two capital projects and then Board of Finance decides how to fund.
One doesn't work without the other, really, why are we
Right.
asking for 588 if
Right, you gotta put
plans
the
to
14
continue?
million in there, it's gotta be on the radar. And then they could decide, just like the bridges that we're doing, okay, yep, they're in the budget, but the slotted funding arrangement is bonding.
But if you go back, I was laughing about this last night a little bit, you go back to this project, right? We started this project in 2007, right, initially, and we got funding to start, similar to this, we got through kind of a schematic design of what the building would look like or could look like, how it could function.
With multiple
And
committees.
with multiple committees. We turned that all on its head ultimately to get where we were. But it's a similar process, right? We're kind of now back asking for that next step of money to move this forward. Just hoping not to have it take 10 years to do and get it built.
So in that thought, I would say we should, if you guys are in agreement, this is to make a recommendation to the Board of Finance to look at the entire 588. This money has to be spent anyways in order to get to the bid process, and once we get to the bid process, that's what we go to the town with, and we don't have the situation that happened with the HVAC, where all of a sudden we got all these grant monies and everything came in, and then we were under budget by X amount of dollars and we have to go back to the town and ask for more money. So we don't wanna do that with this project, so we wanna make sure that we have everything that we need going into the referendum. So we need this, it's not something that we can not do, don't wanna slow up the process because we need it, it really is a dire situation, I mean, if there's a bad storm, we're emptying the building. The fact that we have people in there on a regular basis is kinda scary, but
So
we're gonna stay
your plan would be to have the Board of Finance make a special appropriation in this current budget year
the Board of
for the
Finance
whole
can
amount, for the
figure
whole
out whatever
five,
is the best way to do it,
five
it's not my
whatever.
job, it's their
and
job
not
to figure
split it up
Yeah.
for a special appropriation for 200,000 and then
I mean, if,
budget the balance in a
If-
capital.
but if the Board of
reserve.
Selectmen approve moving forward with the 588, then we can go next
They
Monday,
can
we
go
can ask
figure
the
out
Board of
which
Selectmen.
way is the best way for them to do it, I mean, I'm not a finance person, that's their job. But I think we should say that this 588 needs to move forward and how is the best way they can do it?
And again, we can work on that side of it. I do think if we could get the 223 approved this year through a special appropriation, it keeps us moving and it's not gonna slow us down. So if that is a concern of theirs, we definitely as a committee can work with them.
So, is it agreeable to both of you in regards to going to, at least sending our recommendation that we wanna continue with this process and they can figure out whether or not they do a special appropriation and or not, or whichever way they figure out how to fund it, but we wanna move the process along and ask the Board of Finance to appropriate in some manner or function the entire 588,251.
Yes.
Is that a motion?
So moved.
Can I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Greg, thank
Thank
you
you.
for coming in, appreciate you. Can you do me a favor while you're here, can you just give the rundown on the bridge that you gave last night at the board, just cause you
Oh, yeah.
have the most recent, so you'll know.
So.
And be, I think it's better. I'm gonna throw him under the
Yeah,
bridge.
that's fine. So I meet, as the emergency management director, I meet with the DOT group once a month, we have a monthly call. And just kind of recap and that anything safety wise going on, what the project looks like. So as you all know, we had there was a failure of the bridge 2 weeks ago now, where it was shut down for a few hours. Basically what happened was there are two cables that power the bridge. One is the main cable, one is a redundant cable under the into the bridge. There were two electricians out on the bridge. They were doing some bridge swing testing. When the bridge swung, the main electrical cable that was powering the bridge at the time, it's on a pulley system that allows it, when the bridge swings, that pulley system allows the cable to swing and extend and not. Well, it didn't extend well. It got hung up on something. They're not totally sure what it was at the time of my conversation with them. And it stripped the wire right off, all the coating on the wire right off, and shorted it out against the bridge. So there were two electricians stuck out on the bridge that was now open or partially open. Thank God, because what took so long to get the bridge actually up and running was the fact that they needed to make sure it was safe. So they had to get guys on the street side, right on land, to actually go in, make sure the power was killed before these electricians who were on the bridge could go work on it. And they had the proper tools out there to be able to do what they needed, because it was 6 hours to get it, the Coast Guard cutter up here to break the ice, to actually be able to get a boat out there to get them what they needed if they didn't have it. So so they were able to get it onto the backup cable. So there have been no swings of the bridge since that, because of the fact there's only one cable and they don't wanna get it open and not. That cable had a 2-week lead time. It's supposed to be in, I believe, sometime either tomorrow or Friday. It will get installed, and then next week they'll do retesting. They were supposed to have the design engineering team back out there to look at it to try and understand why it failed. But they couldn't answer for me if they had made a change to the design as part of the project, or if it was just something that had been in there since, the 40s when power was put in there, and this was just something that happened, or something changed as part of the installation of the new electrical, so. But that is what caused that outage. They're still saying it should remain on schedule for the bridge itself to be done by the end of, in the initial phase 1 of the project, to be done by the end of February. However, they're still working on the pylon repairs that were found, which is going to require lane closures to continue to happen on the bridge, because they have to stage stuff as they're working on that pylon on the bridge to be able to drop it over. They are doing a really good job of trying to stage on the sidewalk, which is why that hasn't opened also. So if you drive down there today, or last night when I came through, it may not be there, but they had canisters out there, there's a generator sitting out on the sidewalk, all those things, so that they're not having to do lane closures except for when they absolutely need to. So it's moving forward. They had hoped to have the sidewalk grand opening and all that done already, but at this point, it's not quite there yet.
Thank you, Craig, I appreciate that.
Anytime. Thank you guys for your time.
Okay, next up we have David, here.
Yes,
How are you?
good,
Thanks for coming.
of course, happy to be here.
I'm sorry, what's your name?
Joe McGuire. Yeah, so again, my name is Joe McGuire, I serve as a project manager at Beta Group. We are a full civil site engineering firm, out headquartered out of Lincoln, Rhode Island, but I split time between our Lincoln office and our Hartford office. So today I'm here to present the summary of findings from our recent scans of the roadways across the town, and kind of fill you in on the current status of things and sort of the approach that we take moving forward with the data collected, and then also how we will work to support Michelle with any of the planning needs and budgetary needs that she has too when putting together multi-year capital plans for road projects. So a little bit about Beta. We were established in 1982. We are an employee-owned company, so we're an ESOP, so that kind of adds to the culture of the company itself. All of us being employee owners, we have a vested interest in the company itself succeeding. Our company is more than 170 employees at this point in time, with 6 offices across New England. We do work primarily in Massachusetts, Connecticut, and Rhode Island. However, we also have a Manchester, New Hampshire office and do have clients that are dispersed through Maine and Vermont as well. So we are working in all 6 of the states here in New England. The group that I work with specifically is the GIS Asset Management Group. So we serve communities by coming in, doing mapping exercises, inventories on different assets that the town are responsible to maintain, such as the roads, but that also might include ADA compliance, so sidewalks, curb ramps, stormwater catch basin inspections, sewer manhole inspections, and sort of what our group does is we serve as, again, able to allow the communities to know what they have and ownership of and the current condition of it, but it also helps feed the engineers in case there is work that's then given to the engineering core groups in our company in order to provide them with good data moving forward. So again, today we're going to be talking about specifically the pavement management. So we work in right now approximately over 52 towns across the state of Connecticut. I serve as a project manager on most of those with most of those towns. Right now, a long-standing client of ours is East Hampton. So I've been working with Matt Walsh over in East Hampton for quite a while now. We've done 2 rounds of inspections for him with scanning the roads to continue to support them with their capital planning and the roadway budgets that they work with year to year. And we are currently waiting to receive contract with Old Saybrook as well, so not too far from here as well. Trying to move forward there to support them with a similar project. At the end of the day, what we're trying to do is allow the town to be more proactive rather than reactive to everything when it comes to paving and roads, things like that. So what the approach that we take is allowing you to have the foundations for informed decision making. That's really what we strive to do, and that's through the way that we assess the data, compile the data, report it to you, and then provide you tools and platforms to be able to interact with that data moving forward, so you have a better idea of what you have, how much it's roughly going to cost you to improve, and sort of give you a forecast analysis to be able to see where you could improve to over time. So real quick, again, like I just said, what we're doing here is really a high-level CIP tool, capital planning tool. We're following the Federal Highway Standard deterioration curve for pavement. So it's fascinating stuff, but this is basically the life cycle of pavement itself, starting from a brand new road all the way down to very poor failed roads. So the point of the program itself is to really try to highlight the roads that are in that good to fair condition, because what we're trying to do is we're trying to extend the life of these roads. You've already made the fiduciary responsibility of investing money into those roads. We now want to see that the plan moving forward still addresses roads at the bottom of that curve, but also still addresses roadways still in good shape, or even in that routine maintenance, more of that good to excellent. So that way you're kicking the can, as it were, down the road in terms of having to do any costly repairs to them. You can do a much cheaper maintenance program to these roads and maintain the life of it much longer, extending the life of the roads itself, but also extending the money that Michelle has to work with year to year in order to address roads that we're still trying to fix that are at the bottom of the curve. So that's really what our program is trying to do here. The way we go out and we rate the roads, which we'll get into in a second, is to really try to highlight that specific band. But again, every community is different, so we customize this to fit the goals and objectives that the town has. So at the beginning of this, sat with Michelle right before we scanned to kind of get an idea and understanding of the town itself. We were the firm that did an analysis for East Haddam back in, I wanna say 2010, 2011. I was not at Beta at that point in time, I've been with the firm for about 9 years now. But my predecessor, he and current boss, he was the one that sort of worked with the former director and on that project. So we are familiar with the town. We did have a database already in place that we were able to sort of cannibalize and update to make this a more efficient way to go out and get these scans done. But really at the end of the day, like we said, we're trying to make sure that you have a full grasp of the overall network, but we can also zero into specific locations in town too with the way that we collect the data. So this is really our 5-step approach that we take. So with the system setup and GIS mapping, like I said, we already had existing mapping, so we were able to sort of speed that process up for the town itself. Then the actual pavement inspections themselves, so we use 2 methodologies to do automated inspections, which I'll cover. And then the existing conditions analysis, which we're sort of in that stage at this point. We've delivered the draft deliverable to both Irene and Michelle to have the ability to review it. Sat down with them a few weeks ago to review the current standings of things with all of the paved roads. We are still on the hook to come back out and assess the gravel roadways, because we do have a process to be able to go out and actually conduct inspections on gravel roads too. And with the town having about 13 miles or so of gravel roads, that was something that we wanted to highlight as part of the program. So we're still sort of in the existing conditions analysis phase as it stands right now with all of the paved roadways. But then we will be moving more into the planning, prioritization, system deployment and training. And the reason why those are highlighted is those are kind of, we can swap those in either direction. It's really up to the town at the point of where they wanna be. So if Michelle would rather get the system deployed so she can start working with the data, we're able to do that too. Or we can move right into that planning prioritization phase once we have the full gambit of data. We had to get out there quick, I know, for the fact of trying to get this all organized for you, right during your planning period and capital period of for the town. So the paved roads are really the priority here, which is why we started to do this work. Luckily the weather held up for us to be able to get out there in December to get this scanned immediately for you, so we had the ability to have this data today. Before I jump into the actual process itself, one thing to note too is we are an Esri house at Beta. So we are an Esri partner. Everything we do is GIS centric approach. So GIS is the Geographic Information System. So it's the mapping programs that we use in order to analyze the data, report on the data, and then provide it to you through an online platform system that is user friendly and efficient with being able to actually look at the data itself. So just wanted to touch on that before we really get into that. But this is really the bread and butter of our group, is the GIS aspect as well as pavement management. It's what we've been doing for over 25 plus years now, and very comfortable with this type of information. So the process that we used here in East Haddam, we have 2 approaches. We have image-based, which is what you're seeing here, and then we have a LiDAR option. When we bid on the RFP that came out for this project itself, we decided to move forward with the image-based. One, Michelle had a familiarity with the partner that we are exclusive with here in New England, Vialytics. I know they had spoken to you in the past too. So there was already kind of a comfort level with the technology and the approach that we were taking. 2, it's much more cost effective. The partnership that we have with Vialytics allows us to be much more cost effective with the way we go out, collect the data, and the turnaround time is a lot faster. So knowing that we needed this data as soon as possible in order to have this type of meeting, and then again on Monday we'll be presenting this to the Board of Finance, this was our recommendation moving forward. Both data sets, there's the way that we collect it, there's really not one that's better than the other, it's just the difference in how it's done. So with the case of Vialytics, we have a smartphone mounted in our Beta vehicle that we are then driving down the roadways, capturing, and we're driving in both directions so we get a better swath of the road, better understanding of it. And it's capturing a live video, so that's sort of what that top image is showing. That video is being uploaded at the end of every day to a cloud server at Vialytics. Their machine learning technology and AI then goes through that video and splices it every 10 to 20 foot section of road, creating a point. That point represents a still image of what was looked at that day from the scan, and that's also a part of your deliverable. You get a full photo log, QA/QC photo log of the updated roadway points themselves. So Michelle will have access to that through the online platform that will deploy her. But at the time of the scans and the actual machine learning technology itself, what it's doing is it's going through and it's highlighting different deficiencies on the roadway surface itself. So in that top upper image, you're seeing like the cluster cracking that it's calling out, an invalid patch. So as it's driving, the machine learning technology is then going through and looking at that, splicing the video out into those still images and then assessing each one and providing a rating to it. The rating is 0 to 100. That's the standard way in which we do most of our road surface ratings. So you'll hear me say RSR a lot, that stands for road surface rating. Every road gets an RSR applied to it. Every segment of road also has an RSR applied to it. So the way that we can drill into the data is by the point, all the way to the segment, and then the entire roadway itself. Violytics has been here in the US now for just over a year and a half. They're a German-based company. They work all over Europe. They're sort of the leader in this technology in Europe. They moved to the US market about a year and a half ago, like I said, looking to try to expand here. They're working all over New Jersey, down in Florida, Midwest, and like I said, Beta was lucky enough in June of last year to become the exclusive partner with Violytics here in New England. What this agreement with Beta and Violytics does for the towns as well is in our agreement, we're also able to extract sign information, catch basins, locations, and manhole locations. So those will all be layers that are just added value to the scan itself, and will be put into the online platform that will be deployed to Michelle for use. So you'll also be getting a rough idea, a raw data export of all the signs, location in town, the catch basins, and the manholes. Any questions before I move on? I know I kind of threw a lot at you on the technology side. So this is just a quick diagram, again, explaining what I just talked about. So we're collecting on that first row, collecting the data at that point level. So each one of those photos is going to represent either a section of road that's in very good shape, poor shape, okay shape, whatever it might be. So that's represented by the point level. We then like to segment the roadway networks that we work in by intersection to intersection. That's typically what we're looking for. On rural roads and in a lot of rural towns, what we'll do on those long stretches where there are no intersecting roads, we will break the road at known changes in distress, severe distress changes. So if a road was in very good shape and all of a sudden we start to see severe distresses, we'll break it there so that way it kind of helps draw attention to that specific section of road. Or we'll break it at a known driveway address location, so that way we can break the road up into segments. We don't like being more than about like 3,000 feet per segment because that helps us get a better average as we go. So the intersection to intersection approach is really ideal for being able to do that. And then again, so each one of those segments is now getting an RSR applied to it from that point data above. And then again, we're averaging that out to get the entire road surface rating for the road itself, end to end, from the from to. So as part of this study, we looked at approximately 107 miles of road for the town that was paved. So we're showing that here, the 60 or roughly 69 miles of asphalt roads. We actually had the roads coated as chip sealed from the previous scan back in 2011, and we had that confirmed while we were out on the road. So we were peeling that out. I just thought that was a nice way to kind of show just how many miles of road that is also asphalt, but it's got chip seal on top of it, which is a wearing course. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with it in town now, with the amount that you have. So there's about 33 miles of that too. And then the 17 or so miles of gravel road, that might not include, or that figure includes, I know, some of the scenics, but some of those might be private as well. But this is still to be inspected by Beta. With the weather the way it is, we'll be getting out there as soon as we can, once the weather holds for us better, so we can actually have our lead inspector go out and we do a manual approach on gravel roads. Since they're always changing, you're always regrading and having to do specific types of maintenance on it, but it'll at least give an idea of the current conditions as they are now. And then from there we go into the private section of town. So we have about 6 miles of asphalt private roads, almost 2 miles of gravel, and then the state of Connecticut has unknowns coded in as well. These could be paper streets, also private roads as well. So they, for whatever reason, they kind of classify them as either private or unknown. And there's about 7.5 miles of that. And then the state roads themselves are the 33.85 for a total of 168.74 miles. That makes up the entire town. But as part of this project, we only addressed the asphalt and chip seal as part of the scan, and we are still going out to do the gravel roads themselves.
Did you say paper streets?
Yes.
What does that mean?
So sometimes when they're doing like zoning, things like that, they'll have like these easements, things like that, and it's not a real street, it's for kind of like reference on a map. So they're not a real road, it's just sort of drawn in. It was a method used way back. Sometimes the state still has them in their database, so we try to clean that up as we go. So with the 107 miles that we roughly inspected, each one of those roads is going to get broken out into our 5 major repair bands that we carry at Beta. So this is our standard approach moving forward. So starting from the top, we have roads that fall in the no maintenance required band. These are most likely the roads that you have paved in the last 1 to 3 years, maybe 4 years. And at this point in time, they're in excellent condition, they're newer roads, so they do not require any sort of attention at this moment in time. We do this, we have a lot of paving vendors that we work with. They don't like seeing no maintenance required because technically there's always something you could be doing to a road. But it's a way for us to give credit to the town, so when Michelle is going out and having all this paving work done, we can give some sort of credit to say, you know, these roads were just recently done. We don't need to draw attention or money funding to those roads at this point in time, just because of how new they are. But they do fall on our radar, and I'll get into that more as the presentation goes on. And again, these are usually roads scoring anywhere between a 92 to 100. So our program deteriorates, it's a live deterioration. Every road in town, the minute it's paved, it begins to deteriorate. So whatever the date was that the work is completed, that road will start to deteriorate immediately. Our program is set to deteriorate 2 points per year for every road. So if a road is not maintained in a given year, nothing was done to it in a given calendar year, and let's say the road was an 80, same time that the next year, it'll be a 78 in our program. So we have a live deterioration factor. And the reason being is because it's a living asset, as it were. The roads are constantly changing. So we need to account for that in some way. That 2 points per year, that linear deterioration, seems to hold up really well across the board for us in New England from the 160 plus towns that we've already done this for. We can customize all of that. So as the program starts to develop further, we can kind of zero in with Michelle's input too to say, you know, collector and arterial roads in town, those are your roads that are more heavily trafficked. Those deteriorate faster because they're seeing more traffic. And we could set that to maybe 3 points per year, as opposed to more of the local roads in town are only 2 or 1.5 points, and then your dead end cul-de-sac roads maybe only deteriorate at 0.5 points per year, 1 point per year, because they only service the handful of people that live on them. So it's really kind of traffic driven is how we've come up with that deterioration factor. So then we move into routine maintenance. So these are roads that are still in very good condition, scoring anywhere between an 80 to a 90. Typically, these are gonna be roads that you would consider doing crack sealing, some sort of fog sealing or rejuvenators on. So crack sealing, for those of you not familiar with it, it's the squiggly black lines that you see all over the roadways, and you probably wonder why, what are they doing? So that's what crack sealing is. Fog sealing is more of a blanket approach to doing the similar thing, sealing the road out. Basically, like if you have your driveway resealed, that's what they can do to the roads as well. So that's a form of fog sealing. So again, these roads would be, you're starting to see some small distresses occurring, and these are roads that we're also saying, you know, because you've already made the investment to address them and put them in good standing, we wanna try to maintain them with very low cost effective approaches to do that. Then we move into preventative maintenance. These are roads scoring between 65 to 80, so they're still in fair condition. These are the roads that we are really trying to hone in on as part of our program. This is what we mean by being proactive rather than reactive. And this is a great way to do that. So these are roads that, you know, surface distresses are there, we're seeing them, it's much more visible. But it's not at a point where we're considering the road to be in very serious condition, it's all surface level. So what would most likely make sense to do is some sort of a wearing course on top of it. So that's where like chip sealing comes into play, microsurfacing, ultra thin bonded wearing courses. These are all small lift pavements or forms of pavement to go down over a road in order to, one, hold the road in the current conditions it's in and stop water intrusion going into it, and also to help with the traffic wear that's going onto the road itself. Shim and overlays are also an approach that you can take in order to address roads in that band, but we don't typically see a whole lot of that. But it is an approach that we've seen done in a lot more of the rural communities that are short on funding. Then we move into minor rehab, so now we're really getting into the poorer roads in town. So these are roads scoring anywhere from a 50 to a 65. These are your mill and overlay candidates, cold in place recycling, hot in place recycling, heavy shim level and overlays. So you're starting to see a lot more of a structural issue to the road. It's not just surface level. We're highlighting probably the forming of small potholes at this point, things of that nature. Cracks are opening up way over that 1 inch mark. So even crack sealing wouldn't even make sense to do on a road at this point in time. And there might even be signs of base failure in localized sections of the road. And then from there we move into major rehab. So these are anything below a 50. So these are your worst roads in town. Totally deficient condition, total base failures, blowouts happening, larger potholes, alligator cracking and spalling happening everywhere. So these are roads that are most likely going to need some form of reclamation or full depth reconstruction on them. Very quickly, I'm sure we all kind of have an idea of what a good road and a bad road looks like, but these are just highlighted examples of kind of give you an idea of how the technology works and what the ratings are that it's applied to. So top photo, it's a road that's clearly been newly paved, nice and black. Everybody likes looking at that road coming out of their house. So that's a road that was given a score of a 98. Sorry, below that, we have a road scoring still a very high 88, but you can start to see it's a little more oxidized, a little grayer. There are some small cracks forming down here along the bottom of it. So it's things like that that we're trying to address, and that's really what drives the scores when we're looking at these photos. Then we move into a road scoring a 72. So again, similar to that previous slide, the road is still in very good shape in terms of it's still got its crown, it's still got the shape of it that we would want to see, but the cracking is a little bit more extensive. You can see up here a lot more block cracking starting to form. It's graying out more. There's also a small pothole starting to kind of form here on the surface as well. So it's things like that that we're trying to address. But in this case, this is a road that we were saying if we do something to the surface, we can prolong the life of that road for another 7, 8 to 10 years without having to think about doing something to it for a much cheaper cost. And then below that, we have a road that's in that minor rehab band, kind of teetering on falling into major rehab. But again, we have rutting that's coming along the side of the edge of the road here. A lot of alligator cracking and spalling going on. Clearly starting to have a base deficiency going on there. Water intrusion, freeze-thaw cycles, that's all driving that localized area is probably going to start to pop in a pothole at some point in time. The oxidation on the road is severe, and you're just starting to see a lot more of those longitudinal transverse cracks opening up. And then we have a road that's 40 below 50, very poor shape, extensive alligator cracking all along the side. You have all your transverse block cracking, the oxidation severe. The road is clearly starting to fall into some sort of a base failure at this point. And then right below that, very similar photo, 26. This road is going to need to have some sort of base reconstruction done to it, whether that's reclamation, full depth reconstruction. But this is something where we would say we don't want to put a surface course on this. It's only going to buy you maybe a few years. You're also kind of wasting your money at that point trying to hold something together that isn't already in a position to be able to have it held. So now we get into the existing conditions analysis specific to the town of East Haddam. So of the total miles, which I did not change, and I just realized that at the bottom there, the full length should be 107. So of the 107 miles that we scanned, the overall network rating as it stands right now is a 59.27. To put it into perspective for you, across New England, the average that we typically see with towns is anywhere from a 68 to a 69. That's usually the general score, the average that we see across New England. So we are a little bit behind the 8-ball here when it comes to the score. This is, however, not anywhere close to the worst score that we've seen across New England. We have a town that scored 50, 52, and most recently a 56. And a lot of it has to do with, again, funding drives most of this, but also the type of treatments that are being done and the way in which things are moving along in the town itself. But funding really is going to be the big driver, and that's why we highlight this with this slide. So each one of the repair bands that we just went through and covered, that's what you're seeing for the repair method on the side there. We have an associated square yard cost that we carry. That's what drives our cost estimations for folks like Michelle to be able to use to kind of get an idea of how much money she would be looking at spending depending on certain roads that she might want to address in a given year. So right now we're carrying about $48 a square yard for the major rehab candidate roads, $18 for the minor rehab, so your mill and overlay candidates, $9.50 for that preventative maintenance, routine maintenance $1, and then the no maintenance required is obviously a $0. For East Haddam, about 38.46 miles falls into major rehab and another 14.12 in the minor rehabilitation. Looking at that altogether, about 50% of the network is in that poor condition state right now, as it stands. We have the square yards there as well to, again, let you understand how we're driving that cost. So that $48 a square yard is being multiplied against that 411,000 square yards of poor road, totaling roughly $19.7 million in backlog of estimated costs of improvements for those roads in that shape. So as we go down that chart, you get the total backlog of $25.2 million is roughly where we're saying if you, the board and the Board of Finance were to fund $25.2 million to Michelle next year, she could raise every road in town to essentially a 100. That is not realistic. We're not here trying to pitch that to you. It's a figure that just allows you to sort of grasp how much money goes into the road budget every year and how much it costs to maintain roads. Because with that footnote at the bottom of the screen, we're only talking 25.2 only represents just paving. Has nothing to do with her curbing, sidewalk improvements when she's on a road, any of the utilities in ground, like underground drainage especially. So that 25.2 does not look to address any of that. This is purely if she just came in and repaved every road or did some sort of a surface treatment to it. So that's really why we zero in on that number to really sort of highlight just how expensive it is to maintain roads. And what we like to see as we start working with communities, because one thing that we pride ourselves at Beta with is the fact that once we work with a community, we're around, we're helping you year to year until you're ready to rescan to get a new snapshot of the current standing of things. So what we would want to see is, as we develop these multi-year plans with you, that number essentially we would want to see it going down. That just means that we're moving roads out of the major minor rehab into preventative or no maintenance or routine maintenance required, your cheaper costs, so that number is going down. And that means that you're moving in the right direction and it's showing that you have a healthy plan in place. So that's why we put that figure up there. It's not to, again, address any need, like Michelle's not about to come to you on Monday now or the Board of Finance on Monday and say I need $25.2 million. It's just a way to highlight just how expensive it is to maintain the roads themselves. Any questions on this before I move forward?
Yeah, just quickly, just for my edification.
Yeah.
As far as when you do the analysis, that video device.
Yep.
When you go back and look at to evaluate, is it AI or is it somebody's visual?
Thank you. I missed that. I should have covered that. So initially it's the AI giving us the information, the score back. We have two individuals that we've been lucky enough to have in-house for over 15 years that go and do a full QA/QC of the entire roadway. So our trained pavement inspectors and engineers go in and actually look at every segment of road and confirm that they agree with the score. Because again, AI is not perfect. We're not trying to say that we're taking it as at face value. The reason why we've moved to more of the automated approach since 2018 is really when we started working with automated technologies. Is one, it allows us to be more efficient to collect the data, helps us be more efficient on the cost to the communities. Because the old-fashioned way of doing it is boots on the ground, which we still have a couple towns that like that approach. But for consistency's sake, it's hard we're lucky enough that in-house we have the same pavement inspector that he's been with us for 16 years. Other firms that do this, when the approach was the manual windshield inspection, just driving every road and giving a rating based on sort of the federal highway standard of how to rate a road, that's so subjective. Like what you look at and what I look at could be night and day. So the AI has allowed us to be more consistent because it's giving the same type of input every time. So it allows us to have that repeatable work, but we don't trust it fully. We still have the full-blown QA/QC, and I appreciate you bringing that up because we did a full-blown QA/QC for that. So originally the score when we got it, it was about like a 60, 61 from just the AI. When our QA/QC was done, that's where we got the 59.27 because we are changing scores here and there to address some of the setbacks that the AI can't still like overcome yet, what like shadowing, for example. When you're driving on a road with a lot of tree cover, shadowing effect, that can sort of skew the data. Not to the point that it's like glaring, but just enough that it's like, it might be looking at shadowing as a potential defect on the road. That's why we have our folks go in and confirm and change scores to accordingly to address the road in the right manner.
And just quickly,
Yeah.
surface, the visual that you see on the surface, how much does that really reflect the base degradation?
So typically,
Accurate.
it's pretty accurate. I would say most likely we're 85 to 90% accurate when it comes to the road surface rating itself. Really tells you the story of what's going on underneath the road at the same time. There's gonna be cases where just application from a vendor might have not been up to spec. So that could be why you're seeing more distresses on the surface itself. But before like any road work is gonna get done, you're going to do core sampling anyway to ensure that you know what you have. We are not making recommendations. This is more of, again, it's a planning tool, so we're not making, engineering decisions off of this data. It's just a guide for Michelle to be able to know what she has in what condition. When she goes to actually pave a road and either if it's a reclaim or anything like that, you're going to want to take the core samples to make sure you know what you have for depth. So because that will rule out different types of treatments you could do to a road anyway. So if you only have 1.5, 2 inches of pavement on a road and you go to reclaim it, you're not gonna get a good reclaim because you're bringing bad material potentially up to the surface. So it's things like that will zero in and we can help assist with that once a set plan is in place in order to ensure that, at the moment of the decision, the right decision's being made. But this is a good guide for us to be able to get to that point. Any other questions before I move on?
Not necessarily for you, but
Yeah.
as we move forward, I guess that comment that I made before, like all these directors come in, they have their own plans, not that they've ever gone into probably this much depth, but what's our guarantee that we spend the money using your services and the next person after you comes in and throws it away?
That's gonna be up to management, that's gonna be looking at whoever's running the town to ensure that they're holding the director accountable to forward this plan.
I guess I'd like to
So-
see some sort of guarantees, if we go
I mean-
move forward, this is great information. and
Yeah.
This is a great tool, as you're speaking, I'm thinking that number right there, I think the reason why the can has been kicked down the
Yeah.
road for so long to Board of Finance.
Yep.
Is we really have never seen that number, I don't think they appreciate that number.
Yeah, right, and that's really what Irene and I had discussed and Michelle at the meeting when I brought the draft deliverables in right before this, was the point that, and that's the case in a lot of towns, so it's not like, you guys are ignoring things that other towns aren't. The reason I like doing these presentations is for that sole fact that no one's seen the number before, so they really didn't have a grasp to kind of handle. Again, Michelle's the expert, you hired her for a reason to come in and oversee the maintenance of the town roads and the other assets that are in the corridor itself. But when there's a number applied to it, now it starts to get kind of the light bulb goes off of, okay, we got a lot of money invested here just on roads. Never mind, like I said, the curbing, the sidewalks, the signs, the drainage, the other underground utilities that she has to worry about when she's also doing these jobs. That cost is going to exponentially go up. So just trying to get folks to understand just how expensive it is to pave is a hard battle. So that's why this tool is so effective. To your point about, if there's turnover of like directors coming in and out, we have plenty of examples in towns where we've been working with the same director for quite a long time, and we've been lucky enough because the plan has stayed consistent, and those towns are in a good shape because they've taken the time to follow these multi-year plans and consistently scan every 3 to 5 years like we recommend to make sure that deterioration is being, appropriately addressed in the program for us, but also to just get that new snapshot, because again, we might have an actual winter like we are having this year, whereas the last 5 have been mild. So that also plays a factor. That's why we have that deterioration factor built in. But the rescanning process is what helps keep the data healthy so that you're making these informed decisions appropriately. But we also have plenty of examples where towns have had a lot of turnover. The nice part about this is you have a platform, And so this data will be, it's yours, it's your data, so it will be hosted for you through Beta, but in the town. So let's say there is turnover, the next person coming in, I like to stay, I call it, you know, having a stickier relationship with the town. I wanna stay attached to you and I have a vested interest to see this succeed as well. So the towns that I work with, if there's turnover, I purposefully go in to try to reintroduce myself and say, hey, this is something you have, it's a tool that's already here. We're not here to tell you how to do your job, we don't make recommendations, like I'm never gonna tell Michelle, no, don't pave this road, pave this road. At the end of the day, it's your data. You get to make the decisions. She knows what she's looking at with these numbers, it's just she just needed the numbers so that she can make the arguments she needed to moving
Well,
forward.
and I think to your point in regards to, you know, Board of Finance and, you know, Board of Selectmen, we all get elected, so you don't know who's gonna be
Right.
here from year to year
Right.
or every 2 years or 4 years, whatever it is. But I will say that the current Board of Finance have all, I think, most of them anyway, have signed on to the fact that we have been kicking the can down the road for a long time on our roads. And I think it's because everybody hears about the fact that everybody's driving on these roads and they hate them and there's so much, you know, whatever. So
Yeah.
now, to his point, we have the data, we have the roads that are the worst roads, because everybody says my road's the worst, you know, and it's not necessarily. So now we have the data and now we have plans going forward. When we go to Board of Finance on Monday, you know, Michelle's gonna ask for X amount of dollars for this upcoming year, but this is a long-term plan. And depending on how, again, the Board of Finance is gonna determine how to finance this, I think the Board of Finance has already said that they're waiting for this data, they wanna see what this is, so the plan is to ask to not only this year, but to finish this, like to create a road maintenance. This is what Public Works is here for, is road maintenance. So we've gotta get it on the radar, like we're paying our utility bills, this is a utility bill, we have to pay this each and every year. And if we get to a point where we take care of all these old deteriorating roads, then we're looking at, you
Much
know,
cheaper.
much cheaper
Yeah.
stuff, look, like
Yeah.
$2 million, you know, over the course of the next 3 years to maintain the roads that we have. Let's get there, but we are gonna have to spend this money, and what Michelle's doing when she goes for budget and capital this year is we're gonna actually go in with next year's plan of, here's these 10 roads that we see as being the option. Whether or not, you know, next year something deteriorates faster, we don't know that, but we're gonna go in and saying, okay, we need whatever we need this year, next year we need another X amount of dollars, the next year we need another X amount of dollars. And we'll be able to show that we're moving down into the maintenance area and, you know, spending less and less. But we have to get caught up and, you know, the proverbial kick the can down the road, we can do that, but go ahead, speak to that
Well, we
question
also
too.
wanna make sure that we're including that routine and preventative maintenance year to year in that 5-year plan as well, because if we don't, then it's basically a
It's a vicious
waste.
cycle,
All we're gonna do is just move all those up into the major and minor rehab
Right.
category.
Yep.
So not only are we gonna ask Board of Finance for the 10 miles of road for each year for the 5 years to get caught up, but we're also gonna be asking to fulfill the capital budget as we have been to routine and preventive maintenance moving forward. And I think the other thing too is when everybody sees these numbers and sees the ratings and sees the roads in order, to remember this is our data to manipulate, knowing that like Smith Road may be on a
Right.
lower, but we know how well it's traveled. Or the road Hall Kilbourne, for example, you know, you've got 30 plus more employees driving that road every day, and we know that it's falling apart. So we're gonna be able to focus and manipulate the data to show where we're gonna get the biggest bang for our buck
Right.
each year and make sure that we're putting the
The local
dollars,
Harvard knowledge.
well, putting the dollars where they're most
Yeah.
important in the beginning.
And that's a great point, so again, to Michelle's point, I need the institutional knowledge, that's why I need to have a great relationship with the director, whoever it is in any town, to understand just that point, like Smith Road, when we were talking about it at the meeting we had. We don't know, locally, it's a heavy traveled road. The state of Connecticut has it classified as a local road. When's the last time the state of Connecticut did traffic counts on all the roads to make sure that they're actually classified correctly? It's been a long time. I have a lot of towns that actually look at that as sort of especially for cost, the small towns of Connecticut, that conversation gets brought up a lot because they can't apply for certain grants that the state offers because the classification of a road is local. But the process in order to get the classification of a road changed you guys will be spending more money just doing that than you would just trying to get the pavement moving. So it's things like that. So if I know internally, okay, Smith Road as the example is more of a major cut through, that lets us help customize the plan even more so to the town. And that's where having that relationship with the director in any town is essential for us to create that successful program. So like I said, the program will give you the foundation to start making these decisions, but Michelle's input is gonna be crucial to then fine tuning it to really get it to be what we need it so that, again, residents are seeing the right type of actions being taken. And then hopefully that leads to less complaints, less phone calls for Michelle and for yourselves on the status of the roads. This just becomes a revolving door that you guys, you know the plan moving forward, you know that you have good maintenance programs in place. And again, the 59.27, you know, we are gonna have to play catch up to Irene's point. This is the score as it stands. We still wanna address preventative and routine maintenance where we can, but a lot of the sole focus to start is gonna be playing the catch up on the worst first model. The problem with a worst first model when you move into, as you go down the line with pavement management is you're just gonna create this vicious cycle again. Because if you focus on worst first, you're never gonna play catch up. Because while you're fixing these really bad roads, all of your preventative and routine maintenance roads, like Michelle already said, fall back into it too, because they're deteriorating every year. And it's the towns that we go into where we've done this type of analysis, we help them create maybe a 1 to 3 year plan to start. Sometimes we do 3 to 5, typically is what we normally do. We've had to sometimes do a 10-year plan. How they know what they're gonna be paving in 10 years, I don't know, but God bless them, because the fact that they put that information out there, I don't know if I would, because things change year to year. So when we do these 3 to 5 year plans, we like to have years 1 and 2 really locked in. These are the roads we know we're definitely probably going to do. That allows us to run this forecasting model to say, if we do these roads, where do we expect the score to be? So we can kind of set these goals and objectives incrementally year to year to know where we want to trend, depending on the budget that's being put in and how that budget's being dispersed, which we'll get into as well. So this is just the overall map of the town as it stands based on our scans. So again, like we were saying, you see a lot of red on the map and a good chunk of orange, but there is still a significant amount of green and your light blue, and then the dark blue roads. So the no maintenance required are your dark blue, routine is the light blue, preventative maintenance is the green, minor rehab orange, major rehab red. But again, you can see how I will say it's very evenly dispersed, so it's not like we have to worry about, you know, focusing in on just one area of town. We can kind of develop these multi-year plans to address specific regions. But one point I wanna make is, now that we're looking at this geographically, the power of the GIS that we're using is allowing us to say, okay, let's not just do the worst first approach, because that also might mean that you're moving and mobilizing crews to come in and pave and reclaim and reconstruct roads all over town if you do that approach. We wanna try to localize that type of work for logistics, so year to year, you're not paying on top of the cost to actually pave mobilization fees. So we're using the program data to give us a starting point and set that foundation. And then us as GIS experts, with input from Michelle and the town, are going to try to start to highlight sections year to year to focus on when it comes to those minor major rehab roads. Preventative maintenance and routine, that's where you can start to kind of branch out year to year. You can kind of be all over the place if you wanted to, because they don't really have mobilization fees. These are companies that specialize coming in, doing the process on a road and moving to another road in town wherever you need them to. There's not that heavy mobilization fee with it. But any of that mill and pave or reclamation, full depth reconstruction work, that's where we have to be strategic about where we're putting that year to year so that we're addressing pockets at a time. And that's really the power of having it in the GIS itself. But to kind of go more into the actual funding scenarios now of this. So this is a forecast model that we run in every community that we work with. It's our 5-year forecast model. This allows us to kind of say, here's the current standings of things. So the 59.27 that you're seeing there, with the red dash circle around it, the current standing of the RSR, and then what happens, what theoretically will happen to that overall network RSR score over the next 5 years based on funding. So if we use scenario 1, the 400,000, which I believe that is your current rough budget every year. So if we continue to fund the roads at 400,000 a year for Michelle to do paving, we're going to continue to just go in a downward trajectory. So by 2030, we're going to be at a 56 as opposed to even just maintaining the current standing of things. Because again, we have inflation built into this model. We have it set to like a 3 or 4% inflation rate because right now liquid asphalt continues to go up. Why? I don't really know, but it does. And to be quite honest, the product isn't getting any better, so it's not like the product should be more expensive. We're seeing less ability to get longer life out of a road because of things like RAP, recycled asphalt that they're putting back into these mixtures. So, but yet the price continues to skyrocket for towns to be able to do any sort of paving. So we built that into this model, but right now what we're showing is that 1.25 million at the current standing of the way things are, and with the funding distribution being 50% going to the worst roads in town, 25% of that 1.25 going towards your minor rehab, and then at least 15% and 10% for preventative and routine. That 1.25 would allow you to maintain. It's a very slight increase. It's very hard to see on the graph, but it does go up like 0.2, I think, by 5 years. But just to maintain your current score, you need about 1.25 million injected, where Michelle is roughly getting that 400,000 as it stands. Realistically, we like to show just we do the 5 scenarios because it gives a nice like five distribution lines there for you. But the 1.75 million, that would probably be more of a realistic goal. Somewhere between that 1.25, 1.75 is what we would want to kind of say to a town when looking at this. The 2.25 is the dream scenario, funded every year for the next 5 years. But it just gives you an idea of how much ground you can essentially cover. That's why we do this. And this figure also speaks volumes to, you know, what the money's going to do and what it's going to do to the overall network score. But again, that's all being driven by that pie chart that you're seeing off to the left. So if we start playing around with most of the money, like say 75% was going into major rehab, the lines are going to drop because you're not going to get as many miles done, you're not going to get, so the money's not gonna go as far. That's why we're saying you've already made a good amount of investment in these dark blue and light blue roads. We don't wanna see them fall into that major minor rehab. So that's why we're always saying we still wanna have some form of a routine or preventative maintenance program no matter what you're doing year to year. But in this case, we're throwing 50% at the major and 25 at the minor because we have to play catch up. That's just a matter of the fact. We have to play catch up because of the score being at a 59. The nice thing about the pavement management, the way it works, the more roads you can address at the bottom at the beginning, you'll get those nice bumps in score. So you will see improvement fast. It's actually the towns now that we've been working with. I use Ledger, Connecticut as an example. Been working with them for well over 15 years now. The director, he's been the same director for 30 years. When he bought in, he really bought in on the preventative maintenance and he made strides to get to that point where he's just doing mainly preventative maintenance year to year. And maybe he has 1 or 2 mill and pave jobs that he has to do because a road just falls into it because of a severe winter, severe freeze thaw. But by buying in, you know, his pie chart looks very different. He's got like 75% in the preventative maintenance, but we need to get there. So it's going to take time. This isn't like what was me, what are we gonna do? There's no way forward. There's a way forward, because like I said, we're working with towns right now that are even worse off than you, and they're making the strides. So once we start picking off these roads at the bottom, while still addressing the roads that you still have in good standing, you will see that incrementally go up a lot faster. It's when you get to I would say like when you start to get to the high 70s, which is where Ledger's at, they're actually about an 80 now. It gets harder to see that bump go up because everything's kind of in good standing. It's a good thing. It's a good problem to say it's hard for me to see an increase in score because I don't know how else better to spend the money. It means you're efficient with how you're spending the money. We have one town, one city that we work with in all of New England, and anyone who's already heard this presentation probably knows what town I would be saying, but it's Lexington, Mass. John Livesey is kind of he's the DPW director version of the godfather of pavement management. He's really bought in, he's been a big proponent of it, does nationwide presentations on what he does in Lexington and preventative type maintenance approaches, and just the very way he paves, you know, a road gets repaved in a given year, 3 years later he's doing a preventative maintenance approach to it to extend the life of that road, things like that. So we've been lucky enough that we serve as his vendor, his consultant for that. They are finally just broke 90, and it's taken a long time to get there, but he finally broke a 90. Lexington also has a lot of money, cause they can fund it. So again, it's all about that aspect too. We're not sitting here as consultants telling you everyone can be in Lexington. No, we get it. It's a different state. They have more money coming through Chapter 90 programs. At least in Connecticut, I will say you have the TAR program, so you are getting something from the state. It's not a lot, but it's something. Rhode Island, New Hampshire, Vermont, they get nothing every year. The state doesn't provide those towns with any sort of paving. It's all on the town to find money to pave roads. So, but again, when you look at just the TAR money, that's not enough. The town needs to look at somehow injecting more into it, and then we can start to, essentially over time, when you get to that mid to high 70s, Michelle probably wouldn't need to be asking for as much money every year because we've already played catch up. That's the beauty in this. It's an investment, but it's worth it in the long run for the town fiduciary, from a fiduciary point of view.
So I'm gonna stop you
Yeah.
right here. I know going forward in your slide, you talk about the
Yeah.
software program
Yep.
and all that kind of stuff.
And
but
we're
we
not
have-
really there yet, so I don't
Yeah,
wanna.
so I'm gonna stop the presentation. If you guys have anything more that you wanna ask, he's going to come back to the Board of Finance and go through the whole thing, cause I think the financing pages are what he's gonna be talking about over there, but we have still business to go.
Yeah, and I don't wanna take up any more
Yeah,
of
so
your
I
time.
appreciate all
No, I
those
appreciate you guys letting me come in.
great stuff. I know Michelle has some
Can I get
things that
this
she wants to.
Board of Finance, like I can send it to him in advance, if I have time to read it, right? I'll
Yeah.
send it out.
So do you have any further questions while he's here?
No.
No.
Thank you.
Yeah, anytime, happy to
What
be
you,
here.
Tanya?
So you said you did the road survey in December?
Yes,
This December?
correct.
So it's pretty recent.
Yes, it's very recent, the data's probably about a month and a half old now at this point,
Can't get better than that.
so it's very current.
How long did it take? Just curious.
It took our inspector Kat, it took her, I think, like four days,
Oh,
5
that's
days
not
to
bad.
drive. We can usually get about 20 miles a day on average to scan. And she's coming from our Hartford office, so it wasn't that bad of a commute either.
Well, thank you again.
Yeah,
for
thank you
coming.
for having
Really
me.
appreciate it. Looking forward to hearing more on with our Board of Finance, and I think our Board of Finance is gonna have more questions.
Sure, you got
Yeah.
it.
So while we are on roads, Michelle is here just to give us whatever updates she has, so I might as well keep it in the same time frame.
I brought something with me. There was a public comment made about a pipe install on Daniels Road, that it was installed upside down or incorrectly. Backwards. So I just wanted to talk about that a little bit. First of all, the pipe that was installed was for groundwater, not pressurized water, sitting in soil. The pipe that we use, does come with a spigot and a bell end, and I think that was explained to you at the last meeting about how the spigot end fits into the bell end to keep it watertight. Now, we're not putting in sewer water, so there's not a need for us to be concerned with that. The pipe that we also buy also comes with a bell end and a spigot end, or you can buy it without. And then you can put couplers on it, which you will see here. Now, this is the same pipe that you saw a picture of, which you'll look through. Okay, it's put together with a coupler. Can you tell me which side is what?
That right there is your bell end, the top is the bell end.
Yeah. The point is, for the install of that pipe for groundwater to move down that road, gravity fed groundwater, it did not have any matter or difference to install it either way. The second point I wanna bring is the day that that pipe was installed, the gentleman that brought it to your attention was an employee of the town, took a photo of it, was concerned about it, and never brought it to management's attention, which is concerning. Cause if it was good intention to make sure we're doing things right, as an employee, they should have brought it to someone's attention if they saw something wrong, especially claiming that they're a P6. It just seems a little malicious. We have 5 guys right now, as you know, over 100 years of experience. It hurts. It hurts them to hear that, you know, someone that was their fellow coworker come in and try to draw attention to something that they were very much part of. And then use ill intent and malicious months later with a photo they took while they were an employee. So I just wanna keep that in the back of your head. Was it installed backwards? Absolutely. Does it matter for the install of this job or what it was doing? No. If we were trying to keep watertight, if we were using, you know, pressurized water going through there, not gravity fed, yes, it would be an issue, because then you'd worry about it pulling apart. But for the installation of that pipe for Daniels Road to get groundwater off the road to prevent icing conditions, it's not that beneficial. I also brought, hold on.
Why would you put it backwards?
I can't answer that question. It very might have been unintentional. The people that were there installing that pipe, one of which was also no longer with us, I can't answer that question. Our foreman was on vacation that day. There may have been several reasons why it was done. What I can tell you is that we don't need to dig it out and redo it because it does not matter and because of this insulation. I brought from the Pipe Association technical brief about bell directions and why it's not important, and you guys can read that as well. And then also why bell end doesn't matter when you're dealing with gravity water fed pipe from another supplier that gives the same pipe, just so that you have it as backup. I just feel like it's constantly being brought up to your attention that we're doing things incorrectly or wrong. And I wanted to be sure to come here and stand in front of you that it will not be done wrong in the future. If I have to be there on every job to ensure that the bell end or the spigot end is facing the right direction. I'm saddened that someone that was on our staff didn't bring it to my attention sooner, that it could be addressed accordingly if they felt it was a problem, but clearly there were other intents on taking that photo that day while they were a town employee and working with us on the same job.
So was that person that took the picture the person that installed the pipe?
No.
And how, I'm just curious, how long is that in that particular location?
Length of the road. Starts at the top of the road, it's taking groundwater off this side of the road and carries it down to the end of the road.
Thank you, Michelle, appreciate that. Is there anything else you have in your?
No, that was it today.
Alright, well, thanks, appreciate it. Alright, so let's get back to the business at hand, because I'm supposed to be in a meeting at 9:30. We have a couple of minutes to approve, the special meeting on January 14th, and regular meeting, well, special meeting, we'll just one at a time here. Special meeting of January 14th, 2025. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes as presented?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Next one up is a regular meeting of January 15th, 2025. Have you guys had a chance to take a look at those? Do we have a motion to approve those minutes as presented?
So moved.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, next up is the January special meeting, January 28th, and actually the special meeting of January 29th. Well, 28th, let's do the 28th, sorry. That I believe was our roads, private road meeting, do we have a motion to approve the minutes as presented?
So moved.
All those in favor? Aye. Thank you. And lastly, the special meeting on January 29th, 2025. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. All right, correspondence, we have quite a bit. The Office of State Traffic, OSTA, received a request for the town of Colchester's local traffic authority to review passing zones on 149 Westchester from the east side of Town Lounge to Route 16. They're just letting us know we're, next door, so they wanna let us know that they're gonna extend their limits there and conduct a review of their requests, and just letting us know that they're gonna be up there taking a look. So just so you guys have seen that, I imagine you have. The next one up is from Amaya Shatil. She's at 61 Hemlock Valley Road in East Haddam. She's asked that this be read in our meeting. So it says, Dear Ms. Haynes, I'm very touched by your proclamation as first selectman opposing anti-Semitism and honoring World Holocaust Remembrance Day in our town today, January 27th. I am from a Holocaust family. My grandmother and grandfather both were used as slave labor in Berlin in the early 40s. My grandmother died of lack of medical care. My grandfather and my aunt, my mother's middle sister, were rounded up and transported to Auschwitz in 1943, where they were immediately sent to the gas chambers and murdered. My mother survived as she was sent to Israel in 1939 at the age of 15 with the help of American Hadassah women. Her youngest sister survived as she was sent to an orphanage in Australia at the age of 8. Yet my grandmother was German, a Catholic who converted to Judaism. I have deep German roots. The great question of my life is, how did the Germans let it happen? How did they not stand up to the scapegoating of a vulnerable minority within their midst, neighbors, people of whom they contributed to society? My mother told of the time in 1933 when Hitler just came into power. Her teacher cast her in the role of the Prince of Sleeping Beauty. This caused an uproar because my mother was Jewish, taking part in a German fairy tale. Her teacher, a lesbian, was fired from the school. The next step was the atrocities of my mother's family, and all other Jews in Berlin were ousted from their home and moved to the Jewish ghetto, where Jewish businesses were officially boycotted. My grandfather was no longer allowed to earn his living as salesman in Northern Europe. We are again at a place where vulnerable communities are being scapegoated. They are told they are unwanted, that they are all criminals and treated without dignity. I welcome that you have chosen to stand against demonization of others in our town. I welcome the dialogues on race in which I am currently participating. Whether Jewish or another vulnerable minority, the LGBTQ community, African Americans, immigrants fleeing violence and poverty, or women, we're all contribute to the fabric of society in our labor and culture. It is not easy to accept the other, to accept that we are not alike or share the same background. But if we can agree that our town is safe, a place for all of us, then we will have honored the lessons of the Holocaust. Sincerely and respectfully submitted to be read at the BOS meeting. Thank you, Amalia, for your letter, and I appreciate what your family has gone through, so thank you. And then the last correspondence, these are comments in regards to the private roads, I believe. Oh, no, sorry, this is for the automated speed. This one's from Robert Simmons. He listened to the discussion on the safety devices. He's also read the East Haddam News article, which I will say, I'm gonna stop reading his letter for a minute. They said that things are already done. They are not. So I think that unfortunately, the news didn't necessarily report the correct information. But we are a long way from making this a done deal. It's not, as we all know. But if anybody's listening, it's not a done deal yet. We have a lot of work to do yet ahead, but whatever. I suggest you not rush into a decision so quickly. Eric brought up several items, or a few items of concern that I agree with. The money side, the potential loss to the town, oversight issues, lack of making impression on drivers through automation. I also agree with Tanya that you all should review the study results to see if the problem really warrants this potential controversial enforcement, how big it really is. I know it exists, but I don't think it's widespread among us. I also drive slow, but 10 to 11 miles over the speed limit is easy to do on some of our roads, not to mention speedometer accuracy questions, a hard line, so close to a speed limit that will probably cause you more trouble than tree cutting. If you're trying to stop people from traveling 72 or 90 on these roads, set the limit 20 over and you'll catch them. Or if you have our police set up speed traps, they make a much better impression and use their judgment as to who is really a problem and who might not be. I recently learned that we have a traffic division. This would fall into their wheelhouse. Good discussion. I wish I could have participated, but here's my 2 cents. Best regards. Another one from Gary Liberty. First Selectman Haynes, I would like to voice my concern in the recent article in the local paper. Policing by camera to increase revenue seems to be an overreach of government. We have competent police officers employed by our town and state for that matter to be, which I might add, your plan to put cameras on state roads. In the article, you reference adding to the force, which seems to be a bit of a double standard. I am sure the cameras aren't inexpensive, as I have agreed to supporting most of, not all your decisions or ideas, not only locally, but on the state level as well. I feel the need to strongly oppose this idea decision. Thank you for your time. Any questions, concerns, please feel to reach out. Gary Liberty, and there's my response. Okay, correspondence, selectman report, we'll skip, public comment, we don't have any. Unfinished business, so this was sent to Tim. The only question I think we have on the discussion in regards to this is just, we're still checking on the statute number, but also we've kind of gone back and forth about the 10 versus 15 versus 11 over the speed limit. How are you guys feeling about that now? I think, did we end last time with 15?
I thought so.
I think so, yeah, I mean, I'd still like to see the.
Yep.
the
And
study
I think
maybe.
that we will have that for our next meeting, I believe.
Without that, it's hard to even
Yeah,
know where to start.
exactly. Like Gary might be right, it could be 20 and we can still
Right.
catch people. Yeah. So, okay, so we'll, that's, we're waiting to hear from Tim on that, so that's coming back, so we're good there. And then Three Bridges, so Three Bridges went to planning and zoning, just so you guys know, the commission has felt the acceptance would be in conformance with the East Haddam Plan and Conservation Development protecting historic assets. So that's just another follow-up on Three Bridges. We don't have to do anything on that other than to.
No, what we're waiting for is the actual official in writing from the resident that they wanna give us this property. And then we take it from there, and it still has to go to town meeting.
Perfect. Alright, so moving on to new business, the Neighborhood Assistance Act, this is just, we had to do a minor adjustment to this application.
This one's a
So-
major.
This is a major
Yeah,
adjustment.
we, Goodspeed had both their 2022 and 2023 applications that needed to be modified. 2022 we already completed, and they got their audit in, they're done. But it was just removing something that they weren't able to do and reducing the amount of money. This one is, if you look at the original application, I gave you both the original and I gave you the modified application. It is a change in cost from $90,100, I think, to $40,000, and a total completely different project. And the reason why it's totally different, I did write it in here, I asked them to explain their reasons for the adjustment. Where do I have it in here? Okay, here it is, right under, because you guys approved this in the first place, it has to come back to you to get reapproved for their project. So they're working on their audit, to put them in compliance for 2023 now. The project needed to be completed by December 31st, 2024 to meet their criteria. When writing the original proposal, they anticipated that the work on the parking area and the facade renovations were going to start in the fall of 2024. And they would have been able to apply the NA funding to those projects because they did not start as anticipated. They needed to update the proposal to apply the dollars to other qualifying projects. So what they're doing now, if you see, like if you drive by there, they have all the front torn off and that's starting now. Unfortunately, that needed to be all done by 2024 in order to qualify, that project to qualify. So what they changed it to is, if you look at the new application, they changed it to, I believe it's a compressor that needed replacement, and the Gelston House sign for LED lighting and all that. So it's a total change of project and a total change of price. So Department of Revenue Services requires that the Board of Selectmen approve the change in order to move through, and then what happens is when you approve it, I have to send them the new application, then they look at the application, and if they approve the project, then they give the okay for Goodspeed to finalize their audit. Their audit then comes back to us, we have to certify their audit, and then I have to send them, then the audit and our certified statement that everything they say in their application is in their audit.
That's
And
why
that all
things
has
take
to
so
be-
long.
And that all
To
has
get
to be
done
done
when we
now
have
by
stuff like
March
this.
31st.
Yeah.
In order for them, because that's their deadline, to complete 2023.
Right, so
So it's up
everybody
to you.
okay with the change? So do we need to make a motion to
You
approve
got a motion?
as amended? Make it. Take a sip, quick. Okay, Okay, so we have a motion to approve and forward to the state for their approval the revisions of the 2023 Neighborhood Assistance Act proposal from Goodspeed Opera House Foundation, reducing the request for funding from $90,100 to $40,000 by changing the project from demolition and replacement of electrical controls and fixtures to design, build, and install Gelston House signage and Goodspeed HVAC compressor repairs and upgrades, including administrative costs for their staff.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, perfect. We have a, Frontier has asked, they're going in for a grant for, their round 2 of their, broadband that they're doing around town, and as Comcast asked us in the past to do this, I'm assuming that we're okay with this, but we're looking for a motion that the Board of Selectmen authorize a letter of support to Frontier for their application for the second round of Connected Communities Grant Program organized by the state of Connecticut in support of providing broadband connection to East Haddam residents.
So just to be clear, cause I think we discussed this with the Comcast one, this does not affect our municipal broadband.
Correct, absolutely not. But Frontier is here now doing it,
No, I
we don't wanna prevent,
Right.
just like we don't wanna prevent Comcast from doing anything, cause we're not ready to do anything yet.
It doesn't affect the grant funding either for our own?
Nope, this is a separate issue altogether.
Alright, so moved.
Thank you. All those in favor? Aye. Great, thank you. Next up, we have a beer and wine request from Rathbun Library. Their art show is opening on Friday, April 4th, and they would like to serve beer and wine. We need a motion to approve beer and wine service of the Rathbun Library at the art show opening on Friday, April 4th, 2025.
So moved.
Favor? Aye. Thank you. Up next, we don't have any boards and commissions, so we'll go right to tax refunds. The following requests to award tax refunds, the amount presented are $244.59 to Michelle Kettlety, $146.82 to Victoria Gerard, and $322.72 to Daimler Trust.
Moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, you guys have anything that you wanna add to?
Just quickly, as we
long
go
meeting.
into the finance or the budgeting phase of our lives, phases of our lives,
That's so fun.
yes, it actually is.
It certainly is.
So it was timely that he made that roads presentation, so in my thoughts coming in here today, I was going to ask, like, have you started already the meetings with your directors and like have a good idea of what their asks are?
We're starting that process. The
We're-
problem is what's happening right now too is we're also going through our audit, cause our auditors are here.
Mhm.
So Val is like
Yeah, I get it.
pulled, so
So
probably in the next couple, 3 weeks, I'll be meeting with
could I
them.
impose
Yeah.
something?
Yeah.
As we go through, what my mindset was, again, knowing roads were important, like I said, it was very timely today, cause I'm like, where do we get this money for the roads? And we have to like throw some money at it this time to catch up, right? So I'm just thinking easy stuff, you know me and Mr. Vehicle, I'm a Mr. Cut everybody's vehicle, but how do I find a list or moving forward, like there are different departments that, like the police, they didn't take a vehicle, they put it in the budget, but they didn't take it last year, they pushed it, so but the people that got a vehicle or got capital items last year, and then they're proposed for this year, obviously it's all gonna be in the handbook, but I like, and even
So
if
you're
I can
looking
grab
for a
that, I
list?
wanna compile a list going into it before we meet of
Okay.
saying like,
Who got capital?
if we use the one
What capital did we spend this past year?
correct, who got what,
can get
to
that.
be fair, I guess I'm trying to be fair as to who got what, who didn't get a vehicle,
In our budget book,
yes,
did you get one of those budget books? If you look at the budget book at the beginning of the capital section, there is a Excel spreadsheet
From
in
last
there from last year.
yes, I still have it.
That lists all the capital items that were provided.
But what his question is whether or not they actually got those vehicles. Did they get them?
Correct,
Some
like
of
I
those
don't know
got
who got
deferred.
what physically.
We can get a capital list.
I'm even saying like even when you're meeting with them, just say, hey, listen, Eric's gonna be a jerk again this year, but to be
We plan on that?
to be mindful of when
Right.
they ask for something, like we have, if we're gonna use the 1.25 and the between 1.75 and 1.25 as our number
Mm.
for Michelle.
Yep.
For roads, that doesn't include bridges and all that baloney, so we have
Yeah,
to be,
exactly.
if, I guess maybe I'm trying to do Board of Finance job for him, but I mean, I figure before we go there, my mindset's gonna be how do we afford these roads.
Correct.
That's just.
Yeah.
And
No,
and
understood.
in my mind, the easy stuff is the easy stuff.
Right, yeah, no, but we can definitely, we can print out a list, we can get that. And know exactly what capital expenditures happened this past year, absolutely.
You know, I can't see Michelle coming in and wanting a bunch of machinery this year, like trucks and whatnot, because we gotta do roads, so again, we have to put the trucks on side and go for the roads, right? That's in my mind.
No, I think that'd be super helpful.
Anything else?
No, I'll just say it under liaison reports, sustainability team met a couple of weeks ago. Whenever we met, 17th or something. But we had a very nice presentation from Pace that looked at energy use and consumption in East Haddam. We're gonna overlay that with some work that was already done with Amalia, that Amalia did through Sustainable CT. We're gonna have a really nice snapshot of like our energy usage and you know, they got real detailed, so that'll be
Cool.
something that
Yeah,
we
look forward to
could absolutely present to the board of selectmen after budget season's over, you know. But it
After
was,
phases of our lives.
I was impressed at the level of detail they were able to really
Yeah.
drill down on here in Haddam, so that's
Okay.
something to-
And while we're on this subject, I've been talking to Michelle about hazmat that we do or not do here in East Haddam, as well as our composting program, that has done or not done in East Haddam. So we're gonna look at some of those numbers, we might be switching things around a little bit, because in my view, you know, we did composting to reduce the cost of our tipping fee, not sure that it's really been that whatever, so I think it's gonna take a redirect of the education that we've done, I mean, whatever, when we can talk about this, but anyway, so we're looking at that, we're looking at, we're part of one group right now doing hazmat, but they're all 20 and 30 miles away from here. Whereas COGS does one, it's a little bit more expensive, but not that much more expensive, so we might maybe take the dollars that we're spending on composting and take it over to that, but we'll see. So we're looking at those numbers, so you all know,
SCRRA.
that's the one we're under now.
That's what you're talking about though.
Yes,
That
yes,
versus the river
versus
cog,
the river
yeah.
cog one, so we're kinda looking at that, but just so you know, that's coming up, that we'll be talking more about that, and
That's good, cause I was looking at that too, cause I was like, why?
yeah, like
why
the
are we
ones that
driving
River
so
Cogs
far
does it,
away?
there's, the most is 15 miles away, whereas the Scara ones, they start at 15 miles away, and so people are just not using it, so meanwhile, we have hazardous materials in town that people are not getting rid of or having trouble getting rid of it, and I'm hearing from them. I'm like, okay, well, what can we do? Well, we can bring the collections closer, but it's gonna cost us, so maybe we take the money from the composting, because people are really composting at home, or at least we've brought awareness to it. It's not really doing us much much good in paying for Blue Earth to come back and pick up these containers of the little bit we get. Maybe we take that money that we're spending on that and the bottle money and put it toward a little bit more of a service for hazmat. So we're just kind of looking at all the
Are
numbers.
we gonna split hazmat, even though we're with Scara, we can leave their hazmat or their hazardous waste collection program,
Yes.
and we can go with another one, still go with waste.
So we'll see, we're still pushing on, looking at the numbers and seeing where it is, and we actually thought that the fee for that to be part of COGS was a monthly fee, it's not, it's a yearly fee, which makes a whole big difference. Like, oh, okay, we can continue talking about it. So anyway, so like I said, we're still looking at the numbers to make sure, but that'll be something that you'll hear more about, so I'll keep you posted. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I was looking at
Motion
that
to adjourn.
Second, all those in favor, aye. Aye. Aye and bye. Gotta run. Alright, thanks guys, appreciate it. Thank you for sitting through a long meeting, thank you for sitting through a long meeting and missing some of work. Appreciate it. There was a lot of good information.